Divas, welcome back to Deeper Dive. This week we have our reporter roundtable, and it is a roundtable this week because we've got two reporters with me, two TV reporters. They're great at their jobs. This was a special episode. You're going to love it. We talk all about what it's like to be a reporter nowadays. These guys are young and newish to the industry, newish compared to me. And we talk about some of the big issues going into the election as people are already casting their ballots. You're going to really enjoy listening to Jason Delgado and Forrest Saunders. I loved this episode, and I hope you do too.
What really scares me, right, is that we now operate as journalists in a world that is becoming increasingly crowded, foggy, with misinformation and disinformation. And I look back at when I was starting out in the business and what I was learning in college. We didn't know what social media's impact was going to be on our industry.
You're listening to Deeper Dive with Derek Kam, a podcast by the News Service of Florida. Let's dive in.
Hey, Divas!
Hi.
Welcome to, I'm calling it the Speakeasy because we have a swath of drinks behind you. Boys, help yourselves to whatever, except for the Krog's Head beer is not.
Ice me.
Ice?
Yes.
There you go.
Oh, look at that. We have a
Okay.
little sparkling ice. Orange mango.
Who do we have with us this morning? We're doing a reporter roundtable, and we're zagging. We are zagging because these are not my OGs. In fact, these guys are not old enough to be OGs. These are some new Gs in the building with the where we moved back into the press center. I have a lot of thoughts about that, but we'll save that for another day.
It's a very nice building. It's very nice.
We have with us Jason Delgado. He is Capitol reporter for Spectrum.
That's right. And I've got to tell you, I love what you've done with the place.
I'm trying.
Very floral.
Floral?
A lot of natural light.
Yeah. He's okay. Now you're pulling my leg. And we have Forrest Saunders. He is Capitol reporter with EW Scripps. And
Correct.
so everybody put your phones on focus. I'm doing that. We are just about 10 days away from the election. Can you believe it? I mean, time has really flown. But you guys are new to me and to our listeners because usually when I do a deeper dive, it's when I do a reporter roundtable, it's with another print reporter or somebody who's been around for 100,000 years like I have. So you guys are new to us, and I'd like you to introduce yourselves. I just introduced you, but maybe just give us a little bit of information about you, Jason, and then I'm going to get up and adjust your mic for you while you do that.
Oh, sure. No problem at all. So my name is Jason Delgado, and it's a first-time caller, long-time listener situation here. But I am the Capitol reporter for Spectrum News, and so that includes Bay News 9 in Tampa and News 13 in Orlando, kind of servicing that I-4 corridor, if you will. You remember when that was a thing? The I-4 corridor?
The I-4 corridor still is a thing. Just ask Beth Matuki. Obviously, you didn't listen to last week's episode. We had a long discussion about I-4 corridor and what it means for Democrats. But yes, I do remember the I-4 corridor.
Well, hat tip to Beth. She's a fighter, and that was a hell of a race that they pulled off down there
in the special election. And they're defending that seat very fiercely right now. You know, Tom Keene is up against Erica Booth again in a rematch.
An adorable man. I love his mustache. He's absolutely a very, very interesting dude to talk to. The funny thing about Tom Keene...
This is Forrest.
Yes.
Forrest Saunders.
Yes.
Just a moment. And I love that you're jumping in because I knew you guys would do this. We are going to have a lot of fun, y'all. Just get your coffee or your beers.
You brought two TV journalists before you. We are going to talk all over you, and we're not going to shut up.
I love that because that's a part of my culture is if you don't interrupt, you don't get heard. So I'm really good for that. Okay, so you're talking about Tom Keene.
Yes. Tom Keene. The interesting little anecdote I have for you about Tom Keene was when I first saw Tom Keene, shortly after he had won his special election, he had come to the Capitol to do a press conference. I had no idea who he was. And so here's this man asking me, where's the press conference? They said it's supposed to be here. He was unfamiliar with the Capitol. I had to give him directions. He walked away, and I had no concept of who that was.
Oh, that's
he had
hilarious.
no idea who I was. We have since become acquainted.
So you showed up at the press conference and it was the guy who you gave the directions to?
Correct.
Oh, that's hilarious. And he went on to win, or was this before he...
This was after he had won. So I think it says more about me.
Yeah, they don't know where anything
Yes.
is when they first come here. What's the over and under on whether the Capitol's going to be ready by the time organization?
boy.
Have you been over there?
Have
I
you
went over to
seen it
pick
lately?
up my press badge
Nightmare.
this week, and I'm telling you, I would not bet lunch at my least favorite restaurant in Tallahassee on whether it'll be ready in time.
Well, let me ask you this. Could they even accommodate a special session if they wanted to?
I think they'd just take it down to the Civic Center.
Well, no, because I believe that the chambers are ready. So
Mm.
I think they could actually do whatever they need to do because the chambers are ready and everything else is done in secret anyway. So
Mhm.
See, that's a little taste of Iowa, right? The lawmakers here, they have offices, they have staff, they have, these beautiful office buildings that they can operate out of. In Iowa, you basically have your desk in the chamber, and then you got a little desk next door to it for your aide, and that's it. Welcome to the Iowa Capitol.
So did you come from Iowa?
I did. I was born and raised up there.
Really?
Yeah. 30 some years of my life up in Iowa.
And Iowa is so important in the presidential elections.
Yeah, it used to be a lot more important when both parties participated in the Iowa caucuses at the beginning of the season, but I think Democrats would admit they kind of screwed that up a few years ago, and we didn't get the results in time for us to really kind of figure out who was ahead on the Democratic side of things. And so as a result, Democratic Party in this last cycle said, Iowa, we're gonna wait on you. I mean, they still went ahead and did it. The party still
It had a pretty
did it.
significant impact on our governor's decision.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And Jason, one of the things, you're kind of a crossover because you're doing TV now. And let me tell you, listeners, again, I'm not sure I'm allowed to say this,
Oh boy.
but I'm sitting here with two long, tall drinks of water. So, lady, I just got to tell you, this is the most fun I've had in probably 2 years.
I can undo a button if you want.
No, I don't think I could handle it. So, Jason, you did print, you did Florida politics. I don't remember you said I was looking at your bio. It said you did Politico, and you also worked at the Democrat or whatever it's called, the USA Today network in Tallahassee. So, have you always done reporting in Florida from Tallahassee?
It's unique because, and I've learned this especially with television, is that to progress in journalism, oftentimes that involves relocating somewhere. But I've been fortunate enough where from day one, I've only ever covered politics. And frankly, it's kind of the only thing I do care to cover. And so, I mean, my first internship, it was at the NPR station down in Orlando.
Okay.
And then after that, it was Politico up here in Tallahassee.
Yeah.
I never left.
Okay, that's me. I have always only ever worked in Capitol bureaus and covering politics and state government. And so I never had to do my time at the mothership before like we used to do. But how about you? Did you cut your teeth in Iowa?
I did. So I started out in a tiny little TV station in Northwest Iowa called KTIV, which was a lot of fun because I was like an hour and a half away from home. So on the weekends, I got to go back to my little resort town in Northwest Iowa. And I had a blast. It was great. And it was a good opportunity to get experience with some of these major politicians as they were traveling through the state and cover the caucus and, just get ensconced a little bit. I love using that word, by the way.
I do
It's
too.
my favorite word.
Look, he just slid that right in there.
Come on.
Ensconced.
You're
ensconced in the speakeasy right now.
Oh, listen. These drinks. Thank you so much. Do I tip my waitress? No. This has been a really fun career. Iowa was wonderful to me, and it is always going to be my home. And one of the things I love doing is defending it against all these Floridians who say that Iowa doesn't have beaches because in order to have a beach, it has to be on the ocean. which I flatly
Have they ever been
reject.
to Lake Michigan?
Have they been to Lake Michigan? Have they been to Lake Okoboji? We have
Yeah.
the Iowa Great Lakes. They're wonderful.
Okay,
And they
yeah.
have sand too.
Yeah, no, I know. I went to school in Ann Arbor, so
there you
yeah,
go.
Yeah, I mean, you can actually sail. Like you can't see the
We
other
have sailboat
yeah,
races too.
Right? Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Props to Iowa.
Yeah.
How about
this
that?
is the one with the corn.
I love that.
It's like a radio talk show on the way to work.
I would use and abuse that.
I know you would.
I need to get more sounds because I don't have it. I don't have like the air horn. I haven't. I bet I do have this.
Ooh.
So as soon as you drop a one-liner, it will be on there. Okay, so you've told us a little bit about your, and I don't know if you're going to be allowed to answer this question, but I have to ask it. I don't know if you've been writing about it or what is it called? You're not writing about it. What do you do?
We're broadcasters, so I mean,
So when I say, have you been
Yeah,
covering this?
covering,
Covering's a good word.
but
Yeah.
but writing is fine too. I mean,
Okay,
we
because you do
now-
write your own scripts.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest with each other. I mean, the fusion of journalism is happening right now.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
See, I love when the questions lead
Yeah.
into the answers, or the answers lead into the questions is even better.
I'm not a broadcaster anymore. I'm a journalist, and that's
Right.
it. And I think that's kind of where we're all headed.
Streaming really, I think, especially for YouTube, made an impact on the way you did
Mhm.
do your business. And for us, obviously, vloggers
Yeah.
and, anybody with one of these and an internet connection
No kidding.
is a journalist nowadays,
Yes.
or can at least pretend to be one, right?
I have many theories on that.
Have you seen what the New York Times is doing? I think the future might look something like that. So it's your classic standard print online article, but they'll include videos, and it's almost like they're GIFs, or maybe it's like
Right.
a 5-second video.
Is it a GIF or a GIF? See,
Yeah,
I'm
I
on.
knew I opened a can of worms when
Oh,
I said that.
dude.
I'm a giffer.
I'm a GIF too.
But they'll have like a reporter on the scene,
Right.
and they'll do like a 15-second stand-up just on camera, kind of explaining things, showing themselves at the scene of whatever's happening, and then I'm imagining that reporter's just shooting a minute worth of video.
Right.
And so it's all these like little infusions, and you scroll down on your phone, it's kind of pleasant to read a graph, 2 graphs, get a video. A short 15-second video.
Right.
Roll into your 3rd, 4th, 5th graph, and the same.
Oh.
And I think to Forrest's
see,
point-
I don't usually go ahead. Then
No,
I'll.
but I think to Forrest's point, I think that's perhaps what the future would look like. I think the days, especially moving forward, of I'm just a writer or I only speak on television. I think you've kind of got to be a utility man
Yes.
moving forward.
Well,
If you-
look at me.
look at you, and you do it well, and you do it
Yeah,
well.
But that's exactly it.
Thank
Did you
you.
imagine that you were going to be doing something
No.
like this 5-10
No.
years ago?
No,
Me
no.
neither.
I mean, I just one day I was like, I could do a pod. It's like everybody thinks they could,
Mhm.
and I have to say, like, I don't want to. But I've been surprised at the reception that we've had and the guests that we've had, and
You've got some big names.
Yeah, I had Jeb Bush. I've had a sitting Supreme Court justice, the Senate president, incoming, outgoing,
For Saunders.
and Jason Delgado.
Yeah,
now,
don't sell
right?
yourself short, buddy.
Right.
You're the
right.
A-lister here.
Well, anyway, I'm just yes, I think that new media, whatever you want to call it, we are providing content. We're content providers.
Yes.
And we're doing it in different ways, and I really like that. I do. I miss. I think I don't get the full gestalt of that what you're describing from the phone, because I usually am looking either on my iPad or on my computer, and so I'm looking for the words. I'm not wanting to bother with watching the videos so much, but that's just me because I'm old and I'm just used to reading. Maybe, I don't know. I do listen to a lot of podcasts that are newsy podcasts, and they do a pretty good one. Washington Post does a pretty good one, and their opinion section, the New York Times opinion section, does a pretty good one too.
I do the Journal every morning.
Do you?
The Journal podcast.
Yeah. See,
And I
you're
kinda
more
look forward to
sophisticated
it,
than
too.
I am.
I'm a social media scroller, and that's
I was
predominantly.
going to ask you
yes.
about social. He's doing all this. You're doing all the things for us. Thank you.
Well, no problem. But
Tell me about that.
It's weird. It's a weird gray zone, right? We don't really know if it's helping our industry. We don't know if it's hurting our industry. I mean, there is some metrics to suggest both, right? I mean, we are engaging now with an audience across the globe. If I post a story on social media, it now has the potential to go anywhere at any time.
Right.
But the downside to that is that people may just read the post and not click the link.
This is the problem.
And then you're also cannibalizing your viewership.
That's right.
So I don't really...
Same with your readership here
Yes.
and your subscriber. We're subscriber based. So is it part of your business model or your, daily model that you
It's not something that's overtly stressed to me. In
Yeah.
fact, I've heard some local news companies will discourage journalists from posting their content online. They also say, don't break news online. Yeah, exactly. And the reason is because you want to get those viewers to come back to your site. That's where the ad revenue is. And let's
Right.
be honest about it. We still have to make money if we want to continue to produce good journalism,
Yes.
right? And so that's part of it. It's just, I don't know that anybody has figured out the special sauce to social media yet.
They haven't figured out the special sauce to the freaking internet.
So true.
I mean,
Right.
come on. But what I was going to ask you about, so I am interested in the social media. How much do you rely on Twitter? I call it shitter because I really hate it. It's really bad. Kevin Kate the other day
Yep.
posted something, but that's because I believe that the letter X in Chinese is pronounced Xi. So if you
That's
call
true.
it, so I
Oh.
was, it's a play on that, really. So it's jitter, I guess it's a better way of calling it. Jitter, because it does give us the jitters a lot.
So much anxiety.
Right. And especially now with the time ticking down.
I can answer that question.
Yeah, go for it, buddy.
Well, no, what I was going to say is like, how much do you rely on Twitter as a news source? I'm like worrying about what I called it. So I'm like,
It's because he
I
unbuttoned
blocked
that.
myself.
That's what it is. It's too low of a shirt cut. He's doing a David Muir.
I didn't
It's not
even
fair.
notice. It's hot. Are you really hot?
No, I'll be okay.
This is all part of his plan. This is how he gets interviews. You understand? He just stands in the Capitol, starts undoing buttons.
Oh, you're so generous. That's a
Yes.
fancy fan.
Yeah, but it's not. It doesn't seem like it's going strong enough right now.
You are basically Charlie Crist at this
I have
point.
fans pointing at me from all directions.
I saw somebody sweating the other day, Corey Simon, during that debate that I moderated, and it made me think of Charlie Chris. Anyway, the Twitter.
How often do I use it?
Yeah,
You
how
know-
much do you rely on it, and how often do you use it?
Almost too often, in the sense that I think Twitter now, whether you love it or hate it, kind of drives an agenda for the day. And it's for better or worse, it's kind of a conglomeration of news, right? I mean, a couple swipes in the morning, and I've already seen, based on my timeline, plenty of links that kind of give me an idea of what's happening on that day. And even moreover than that, I mean, we could talk about access to lawmakers all day long, but oftentimes, I might not get a response or they're unwilling to
Yeah.
speak, but they'll tweet something, and if I need to hear specifically from that person for that on that day.
Particularly from the governor's office nowadays, it's very difficult to get a response unless it's something that they want to give you. And so you do have to. Do you guys have TweetDeck?
I used to at one of my old stations.
So I pay for my company pays for TweetDeck for me so that I can, because it makes it much easier. Otherwise, it's just like a big mess. And I get a lot of, because I follow Rex Chapman, I
Oh,
get
yeah.
all this sports crap. If I don't go to my paid account, like I just get all this sports crap, and I'm like, I don't care. I don't know any of that. So
I'll
anyway.
tell you what, though, the moment I leave news, I'm leaving Twitter too. You won't find me on there.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Kevin Kate the other day said, like, how about like how many of you are leaving this site after the election? So I don't know.
I will
mean,
not leave this site after the election. I will leave this site if I ever leave the industry.
Right.
It is too much anxiety.
Yeah.
I think you and I talk about it all the time, how if we're going to post something, we sometimes think about what the response is going to be and how much, it could be the most accurate and verified thing on the planet. But there is such a angry mob out there that exists on both sides of the aisle that it sometimes makes you second guess yourself.
Because I mean, I'm just going to say it, this quiet part out loud, because the governor's office, I mean, they're never going to come on the show. So I don't know. I mean, and I'm not trying to point fingers at anyone in particular, that not just the governor's office, other thought leaders like Christopher Rufo, for example,
Sure.
they will shame you. They'll drag you.
Mhm.
So does that, like, do you think about that before
Every
you?
time I post, I think about what the reaction is going to be, but then I remind myself that that's not my job. I'm not here to make people happy or sad. I'm just to inform them.
Right.
That's the goal. And
Right.
if the information is verified, if it's factual, if I know that it's true, then I shouldn't be afraid. And I'll also say this, you say what you will about the governor's office or Rufo or any of them, they know what they're doing. And they have, to their credit, amassed a large following,
Right.
and arguably have been a very, very successful communications effort for Governor Ron DeSantis.
Absolutely. No, and I'm not judging. I'm just saying this is part of how they have become so effective is they drag people and they respond, and then if you send them, we see it all the time, they'll include excerpts of responses that they get from news outlets on Twitter as part of I'm calling it shaming. I guess that does sound judgy, but I mean, to mock maybe is a better, right? I mean, to highlight what they're doing.
And on the other hand, I think there are moments. I'll give two examples. I think there are reporters, journalists out there who I think have gotten loosey-goosey on Twitter or have stepped in it themselves.
Too much editorializing. Stop it. Stop
And
it.
it does
Write an
any favors.
editorial. If you're an editorial writer, write an editorial. You're not I mean, it's just the advocacy journalism. There seems to be no line anymore. I'm very I hardly have any followers, and you guys, I know, like when I tweet something, my friends out of pity will like it just so that I get one like. Like it's usually about my dog or a butterfly or something that I'm growing in my garden because a
couple of cats on a chair.
A couple of cats on a chair. Rick Wilson did like that one, so it got a little traction. So.
And I've given force. I know we've talked about this before, and I've told my stations. I generally speaking, my Twitter is so vanilla. There is nothing exciting happening on my Twitter. If I tweet, it's either because A, I think I'm first to something, or B, I think it's insightful or there's context to something. But the idea of me just live tweeting a committee meeting or kind of ranting about my musings, which, by the way, no one really cares what Jason Delgado has to think about anything.
Nobody
I don't
cares
flatter
what any
myself
of
in
us-
that way.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
And so I try to be, I'm very careful about what I put into writing. And I try to be very deliberate about what I do specifically tweet. And most of the time it's Governor DeSantis, quotes.
That's what I do.
Just
Right.
Governor DeSantis on this, Nikki Fried on
Let
that.
it speak for itself, right? We don't need
That's the
to
point.
weigh
Yeah.
in on like I'm doing now. And I'm not really trying to. I think you're right. They have a machine that is so effective and has, it made him, it really helped to put him on the national stage.
Absolutely.
This social media. And this is what is, I think, campaigns now have evolved to. Like when I first started working in this building, that room downstairs where there's a sink, there next door to it, it used to be the mail room. I don't know if there is still a mail room. I'm using air quotes like mail is something that's needs to be air quoted. But there were these little slots and people would come over and they would put press releases in the slots and you had your name. Look, I'm teaching these guys
It's
something.
charming, right?
It is charming.
Yeah.
I mean, it is that. This is how old I am, but this is actually what they used to do. And they'd put you'd have your name, whatever the name of your outlet was, the Palm Beach Post. And if you weren't in the building, because we were fancy, we were on top of goodies, you'd come down and gather them a couple times a day. And then people would come and they'd have press conferences down in what is now our office. And I don't know if you ever even attended a press conference in that press conference room. No. So, everything has evolved, but it's not that long ago. It's in my lifetime that you actually got press releases that weren't on, that you didn't see on Twitter first.
And that's the big, so much has changed. And I think to kind of get to the heart of the the point of this whole conversation, and I think what really scares me, right, is that we now operate as journalists in a world that is becoming increasingly crowded, foggy, with misinformation and disinformation. And I look back at when I was starting out in the business and what I was learning in college. And I remember we didn't know what social media's impact was going to be on our industry. We knew it was going to be something, and we were encouraged to start a Twitter profile, which is actually when I started my first account.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, well, it could be a landing pad for your content, and it can be this opportunity to showcase your work to people who aren't traditionally viewers. And so we did that. But now I look at the world and I recognize what social media is, which is it is, as we all know, now a platform for anybody to do what we do without the vetting, without the education, without any of the training that we go through to get to where we are. And that has an upside and it has a serious downside, which is that we don't have people who are broadcasters pushing information that hasn't been vetted or doesn't have the same scrutiny that we all do. The loudspeaker has been shared with everyone.
Well, and the downside is that comes at a time when tempers are really hot,
Yes.
when people are really tribal, when our politics has become so much more heated, and people were always angry and there were always trolls, but the mendacity, the degree of anger to me now is just it's exponentially intensified because of this. I feel like the internet in a way, and social media in particular, was supposed to be this great platform to bring us all together, right? Bring us all closer to each other from around the world, and you're sitting in your garage or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
And instead it's really divided us and isolated us more than I think.
And I mean, it does do that. I mean, it's wonderful to know that anybody now has a voice, a powerful voice that they can use to advocate for an issue or talk about something that is being underreported. But the downside, we have to ask ourselves, how detrimental is it to our overall knowledge when we go out to cast a ballot? I mean, I worry about this is the kind of thing that gives me anxiety because
Me too.
I see it all the time. Misinformation, disinformation, all of these reports about foreign nations trying to influence our opinions in this election cycle. It scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, I mean, especially now when you're hearing about election, people making allegations of elections, being fraudulent. And, I think I saw something the other day that they found 20 ballots out of like 3 million cast in Georgia were not
non-citizens.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like, what, people, I don't know. Are people stupid? Is it just that if you hear something over and over and over again, that makes it true?
People are passionate. And I think that what's happening is you've got people who are leaning into that. They are using our I guess, worst angels, right? And using them against us, our bias, our prejudice, and they're leaning into it to influence us, to make us angry about things that, may exist, may not exist, just depending on whether the information is accurate. And there's so much anger out there right now, and I think it's being propagated because that is what drives us to click and like and comment, and it's a vicious cycle. It's
a big popularity contest too for us. And I find, I see other reporters, and sometimes when they're posturing on social media, I feel like, they want to be first, they want to be smartest, they want to be snarkiest. And that I find that like such a turnoff to me.
Oh, I think it's, yes. I think what's interesting is, and I tell people all the time, is like, hey, your critiques of journalism, I probably share a lot of them too.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how much I agree with you on this.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the answer is, but I do know what I can do about my own reporting. Like I had an editor very early on, and this stuck with me. But she told me, she was like, hey, protect your reporting at all costs. And I think what I took from that was that like transparency is absolutely the best policy. So if I'm going to write a web story, I'm going to have a million hyperlinks. You could probably
Yes.
click on every other
Oh,
word.
I love that.
Like, this is where I got that from.
Context.
Lose the adjectives, lose the adverbs.
Yeah.
You know, it's not glamorous writing. And I'm not going to flatter myself thinking that people come to Jason Delgado as if I'm the New Yorker.
Right.
I saw a wonderful post the other day that talked about the ethics in the state of journalism. And what it basically said was, we are entering an era where we need to stop just telling people the news and show them our work.
Right.
We need to show them the raw interview. We need to show them how we got that information. It's not just about telling them anymore because the trust level is so low.
Right. Right. I had a woman on the podcast a couple of weeks ago who teaches, she has a very long title, but it's it's a J school at UF, the Center for Trust and Communication, whatever. And you might be interested in listening to that discussion, to what she had to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what drives me bananas too?
What?
A 1,500 word article. Like, come on now.
See, because I feel like 1,200 words is like my average, but it always ends up being 1,000.
And
you're an Axios guy.
I'm an Axios believer.
You are.
Yeah.
You like
And
bullets.
I like bullets because I think that's where the reader is,
You're right.
and there's a time and place for a 1,500 word article. Heck, I read them all the time.
Right.
But if you're showing up to some random subcommittee meeting, I think you need to be honest in the sense that your reader, they're working hard and they probably have a family and they're scrolling through their phone for a couple, free moments they have. And I just think it doesn't do the reader service.
I agree. No. If you're doing it because you're full of adjectives and adverbs and whatever, yeah, I agree. I get caught up because I need to put the context in there because I want people to understand why this is important and what the history is behind how we got here and how this could affect things. Mm-hmm. And if you're hyperlinking, that's fine. But if you can't, if you're just if you're just doing whatever you're doing, sometimes that's my defense and I'm sticking to it.
No, and again, I think there's a time and place for it. I'm not knocking you, Dara.
Yeah.
But Lord knows we've all seen it. We're like, wow, what the heck's this writer doing now?
Yeah, it's a subcommittee meeting and we've got a Hemingway, right? Yeah.
Oh no. No. The turn of the screw, we don't need 1,500 words on it. Unless it's about alimony.
There you go.
I mean, my God, the emails on the alimony.
Fortunately, I know nothing about alimony.
Okay, well, you don't have to know now because they fixed it.
Good.
One of the questions I was going to ask you is, I don't know if you all have been reporting on this. The governor's administration wrote letters to the TV stations, and I don't know if any of them. I think one of them is one of your stations.
Scripps received letters,
right, about the ads on the abortion amendment.
Yes.
And so that litigation, I cover a lot of litigation, which also tends to be like, now I'm thinking it's all about me because it is all about me. So you're saying I write my stories are too long.
I love your reporting.
All right. Thank you. I needed to hear that. But anyway, so are you guys are you covering that? How do you cover that if you're also the subject of that? And if you're not allowed to talk about it, I understand that.
I haven't been told I can't talk about it, and I have covered it.
Okay.
So I'm happy to tell you how I handled it.
Okay.
Which is I first contacted our legal counsel.
Sure.
And I said, what's the situation? And basically he broke it down for me. He said, we received these letters. And so I went out there and I told the truth. I said, we received the letters. This is what the letters allege. Here's the ad. Here's the pushback. And I kept it as simple as that. And I don't think there should be any fear in doing something like that. I recognize that the stakes are high, and I recognize that there are a lot of emotions behind Amendment 4. But at the same time, I would be doing a disservice if we didn't address it.
Right. Yeah, because it is news. Amendment 4, I think, I don't know if I mentioned, but and our sophisticated listeners know this, but Amendment 4 would enshrine the right to an abortion in the state constitution. The allegation in the letters is that there is an ad that's deceptive and false.
Yes.
So that's in litigation. Judge Walker's holding a hearing in that next week, so I'll be there.
I think we all will be.
Yes, but you won't have your phone.
That's true. You get the phone.
I get the phone because the clerk entered an order because they got so tired of me calling and saying, "Can I bring my phone in? It's a medical device because I have this thing."
Oh,
It's
sure.
Because I have type 1 diabetes and I could go into a coma like that. Anyway, so it's complicated, but it is a medical device and I do need it. And I was calling, like finally the judge, for years I wasn't allowed to bring it
Sure.
in. Now they were like, okay, but you have to call the judge and let them know you're bringing it in. He'll tell this, the JA or whatever it's called, the court deputy will tell the Gestapo at the front desk. Sorry. They're really nice. The security guards at the front desk that you're bringing it in. And so that rigmarole, one day I went in there and I showed up with my phone and they said, "Oh yeah, we have an order." And I said, "What?" And no, I called and she said, yeah, I got an order about that. So the clerk of the federal court herself issued an order. I can show you. I should print it out and put it on my bulletin board. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I should. Yeah. So
Well,
anyway,
that was kind of them, right? Considerate.
they were tired. Yeah, no, they were
exception.
tired of me.
I'm sure there's part of that too.
Calling because I'm over there all the time. Whatever. But it was very considerate of them, and it is actually it is a disability, so it is an accommodation that is.
It's important. It's life-saving.
Yeah. So anyway, I will have my phone. I will be honest, I don't sneak like texts or.
You're not going to live tweet.
I'm not live tweeting. I'm not recording. I just because I really do need it.
Honestly, I just want it for taking notes.
Yeah.
That's the
it's
easiest
really
way
hard
for me to do it.
stuff by hand anymore. I mean, it's
Sooner or later, it's got to come around, right?
You would
Isn't
think
that kind of archaic?
It feels very archaic.
And for the sake of transparency, and you'll notice if I'm covering a federal courtroom, my quotes are going to be 5-7 words long.
Oh, mine too.
Because I want to be accurate. And,
Right.
and Lord forbid, I get something wrong.
The
and so-
defendant responded, "No."
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's really hard to cover federal
is.
court. And I mean, if we still had a press corps that was functioning, I had for years been asking, please, can we, as the press corps, maybe you young people can do this, write a letter to the chief judge and the clerk and ask for us to be allowed to bring our computers in or something for note-taking purposes, because in the Southern District, you are allowed, they have a media room so you can bring it is not universal that you can't do that. So, anyway.
And you touched on something else that's interesting in the modern era of journalism, which is that our press corps is now fragmented.
Yeah.
And that we don't have a insular unit that, does the press skits or any of that stuff anymore. And I can't help but wonder if that is also sort of a tragedy in the reality of social media, right? We all are now.
No, it's them not being able to adapt to the internet. They couldn't figure out how to monetize the internet, and so they can't pay reporters, and so newspapers went belly up. I mean,
and
isn't that what happened?
Kind of.
I think that's what happened.
And I mean, because of that, we've also become so much more insulated, right?
Right.
I mean, people don't.
And then the social media thing happened sort of concurrently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I always think it's interesting hearing, someone like you or say a Fine Out or a Dixon guy, folks who have some sort of institutional, a legacy here in the Capitol Press Corps.
Yeah.
Because I arrived in 2020 as an intern.
Oh my gosh.
For the pandemic, and
20 years after.
as far as I can tell, that's when.
Oh,
things
you got
started to
here
fall
during the
apart.
pandemic.
I got here about 3 weeks before the pandemic. I
Oh my
remember
gosh.
reading headlines about something happening abroad. Some virus. But 3-4 weeks. I feel like it happened like that. But the press corps, let me ask
So
you.
you only know this.
This is all I know. And I think and we've acknowledged this. I think the governor's administration is aggressive when it comes to comms. I think they like to get up front and address what they consider to be misinformation or misreporting. But that's all I know.
Right.
And so you'll hear stories about Christmas parties or a time when the press corps held press skits, which someone had to explain to me.
I used to go to the mansion. I mean, I had dinner. I sat at Rick Scott's table at a dinner one time, and it wasn't a press dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they used to have press night at the mansion, And had you ever gone to one of those?
No. I came in 2019, so I was kind of in
Okay.
that same time frame
Yeah.
as Jason.
You used to go. It was, you'd schmooze with them and eat in the dining
Mhm.
room, and
But that sounds like a nice time.
I
And
di-
I'm not complaining. I don't need to be courted. I just think I make that point to say I think there's the evolution of the press corps, from what I hear from stories from reporters who've been here much longer than me, is just dramatic. And maybe
I
in the
don't think
last-
it's like this everywhere, though. I think there are new state houses where there's more comedy between leaders and reporters. I don't think there's necessarily that this, there's always going to be some friction.
Sure.
But I don't think the degree of antagonism that we're experiencing now is universal.
Because how many full-time reporters do we have covering the Capitol right now?
I don't
just
know.
ballpark.
I don't know.
20?
20? It's less than 24, I would imagine.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of folks.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of folks.
And I
But
think
it's
that-
enough to be able to go to have, cocktails with the governor once a year.
Hmm. I'll give you that.
Well, and you have to do the metrics, right? I guess I wonder in their minds.
They don't need us.
Exactly. No, seriously.
No,
I
they
mean,
don't.
we
Why do it?
well, and I mean,
we're not nice to them, and they don't need us. I
Yeah.
mean, that's how they look at it. They've got Twitter, they've got
Exactly.
Rumble, they've got whatever.
there are other
They've got
channels
national
now.
news. You know,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I understand. He's our governor's a conservative rock star
Yes.
who draws a lot of attention, and they're bigger platforms,
Right.
Yes.
You know, and I totally understand the logic and the strategy there. You know, and good on them. No problem at all.
It is. I think one of the things that always boggles my mind, though, when you look at the polling of where people go for their most trusted news sources, right?
Mhm.
Still tends to be local news sources, right? They tend to lean on local news as the more trusted source of information than, say, the national outlet.
It's like you don't like Congress, but you
Right.
like your congressman.
Right,
It's been like
exactly.
that for 100 years.
Exactly. So I still take a lot of pride in that. I think that the
Yeah.
hard work that local journalists do really matters, and it makes a difference. And I think that when you are interested in what's going on in your neck of the woods or your state, you still turn to those outlets that are legacy within either your community or within the state as a whole.
Mhm.
And that still gives me some pride. But I do worry. I do worry that because the trend lines for everybody are still sinking, and I don't know what to do to change that.
But I wonder, do you feel like you guys as TV reporters, do you think you get treated differently than, say, a Politico or Miami Herald or something, because you don't really have opinion sections?
Yeah.
So do you think you get you have a less antagonistic relationship in the Capitol, or?
You know what's interesting, and I might kick myself for saying this.
Can't wait.
But I come. So I was in print, obviously, for a
Right,
while,
that's
and then I
right.
made the leap to television.
Yeah.
TV news is inherently access driven. It's baked into the cake.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so I think with that comes a caution, to an extent, of course. You know, where there needs to be a courting and a relationship there.
Yeah,
Because
unless you're the
again-
guy who's like running around like, why won't you answer our questions?
Right.
You know?
God help me, that'll never be me.
Right.
Um, But so I think the relationship between a TV reporter and, say, a lawmaker
Yeah.
is fundamentally different than
Yeah.
Than a print reporter and a
I
lawmaker.
think you're right.
Yeah, it feels a lot like high school in a way. It's like everybody's having a party and you are either invited or you're not. And I have that anxiety all the time when I see somebody break a story, because I think to myself, what do I have to do to get that story?
Right.
How do I get that? Why didn't I
Why
get
didn't they?
the
I know. I
call?
feel like that's still after all these
And
years.
so yes, access, especially just in political reporting in general. I mean, it is just a big house party, and you're either on the list or not. And I do think that you do have to walk a delicate line, right? You have to recognize that access is important, but it's not everything, and you can't compromise your ethics for access. I mean,
Right.
and that's something that we all kind of sometimes have to ask ourselves.
Mhm. But I appreciate the pressure more on TV, having made that leap, because it's important to get him or her on camera. You know, my story is based on getting that person
Yeah.
to be able and willing to talk to me on camera. And that's during
You
good
have
times
to.
and during bad times.
That's right.
And I think as opposed to print where, you know, I can just run a statement or, you know, they refuse to comment. And sometimes that's plenty enough.
You're
of
conjuring a
statement
Don
itself.
Henley song.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, a little
Yeah.
dirty laundry.
Get the widow on the set.
Oh.
I mean, I got to tell you, that's still sort of the mentality.
Is it really?
Not get the widow on the set. That's
Yeah.
so cynical. But
No.
it's get the soundbite, get the
Yeah.
emotional story.
Right.
We want to
It's the
compel
money
viewers
quote.
to watch.
You need the money quote.
Yeah.
And
I mean, we do that too,
And
but
it's-
not to that same degree.
And there's not many of us TV reporters up here covering the Capitol full time.
True.
And reality is, more times than not, Forrest and I are running to the exact same stories every day.
Sometimes we'll
Right.
share, you know?
And yes, but the funny thing is like, we could have the exact same story, but if he got him or her on camera and I didn't,
You're going to get a call.
I'm getting questions.
Are you
About where
really,
were
or are
you?
you questioning yourself
Oh,
internally?
well, I'll always question myself internally. but the boss, you know, and no shame on my bosses, not at all. But, you know, I think at any newsroom,
There's so much pressure.
you know, it's, you know, if
Yeah. The
Forrest got the
competition.
interview and I did not get the interview, he's like, well, where were you? You know, what happened?
Yeah.
Yep. And we have found as a Capitol Press Corps within the sort of insular TV world
Yeah.
that it often works a little bit better if we all coordinate. Like if we say, hey,
Yeah.
listen, I'm going to try and get that politician if
Yeah.
you get that politician, and then we'll share because we all benefit and we recognize the importance of accurate.
Oh my God. On
and
my side, they
even coverage.
never like.
I know.
You would
I
never do
like
that
to
in
do that.
print.
I like to do that,
Mhm.
and I'm a wire service.
Mhm.
So people are using me anyway, and sometimes they're giving me credit, and sometimes they're not. But you know, I worked for AP as one of my first jobs, and I really liked being part of a team and
Mhm.
sharing, and you know, having people contribute. And these guys just like they want to be first. They don't want to share. They're very protective, and you know, whatever. I'm kind of the old lady now. Like,
Well, I'll
I
tell
don't
you
really
something,
get
and you'll
to-
get a kick out of this. I mean, there's days where I might text Forrest like, "Hey, buddy, by the way, I've got Senator Tommy Tough-Knuckles on a Zoom call at 12:30. Did you need him? You know, do you want to hop
Oh,
on and
that's
do it
great.
together?" You know,
That's
and he's done
great.
the same for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There's a very much a back and forth between us, and
Yeah.
and again, it benefits not just us and our careers, but more importantly, it benefits the viewer.
The viewer,
Yeah.
right? The people, the
Right.
consumers. And sometimes I'll see you guys doing interviews in the Capitol, and maybe not either of you
Mhm.
specifically, but sometimes when I see someone talking, I'll say, "Hey, do you mind if I just
Yeah.
listen in?"
Of
Because
course.
it saves everyone time.
Yes.
And, you know, what's the point of doing you for 5
Yes.
minutes, me for 5 minutes, and him for 5 minutes?
If
I
I'm
mean, it's
literally
silly.
standing in
Yeah.
the fourth floor corridor and
Yeah.
everyone is watching me do an interview,
Yeah.
that's an interview anybody can get.
What's the story that you guys are focusing in on right now? Anything like as with the and you know lead up to the election? Is there
Sure.
anything that's dominating your time right now?
I think for us, well, I'll speak for myself. The amendments. I
Yeah.
mean, that's.
Yeah, you joked. You were like, "I'm going to talk all about Amendment 6." I was like, "Don't."
And I would be relentless about it.
Yeah.
Wall to wall at Amendment 6.
Yeah.
But
It took us all. Just to note to listeners, it took us all about 2 minutes to come up with
Figure out
what six is.
Does that even exist?
Yeah, I think there is.
But
Okay,
I know everyone and their mother's talking Amendment 3 and 4.
right.
That's where the battle's going to be fought. I think you talk to both party chairs, they'll acknowledge. Obviously, seats matter. You know, the makeup of the legislature. I mean, heck, even the governor is traveling the state. This is what, day 2, day 3,
Yeah.
hosting press conferences. Amendment
Yeah.
3, Amendment 4, Amendment
Right.
3, Amendment 4.
Yeah.
Mhm. One would legalize recreational marijuana, and the other is the abortion one we mentioned. There are three. My mnemonic for the three is 3 weed, 2 E's, 4 is the other one.
That's the other one. I think for me, I'm also not just looking at that, but the relevance of the Democratic Party as a whole in Florida. I think there's a
Right.
lot that is at stake for this party during this election cycle. To Nikki Fried's credit, she has done a lot of media. She has worked her butt off with the comm strategy
Mhm.
to encourage people to get out to vote, to remind them that they still have a vote, that this party is breathing. But we'll see. I mean, when push comes to shove and we get the votes counted, Are Democrats going to, be able to knock down the supermajorities in one or both chambers? Are they going to be able to flip a congressional seat here or there? Are they going to be able to win that coveted prize
They
of a
need
Senate
5 seats
seat?
in the House to, they're not going to knock out the supermajority in the Senate.
That's what everybody keeps saying.
Right.
Yeah.
So they could pick up 1 seat in the Senate if Corey Simon. This is Dara.
Yeah.
We had Beth on here. They think they can pick up 5 seats, and they need 5 seats
Yes.
to flip the House.
Yes.
So they are defending 5 seats, and they think they can pick up 5 seats.
And
5
speaking
seats.
to,
And I don't know how much do they really believe that?
yes,
I don't know, but if they can pick up any and
Yeah.
not lose any, that's a good trend for them, right?
beating expectation is the name of the game for November 5th, and that's what they're gunning for. I don't know that there are a lot of Democrats out there right now who have these pie in the sky dreams of winning the presidential race here in Florida. I think everybody knows that they're
Right.
definitely fighting for it,
Right.
and they're going to try as hard as they can. But I mean, that is a lofty goal, and I think they even recognize that. But I think overall, you want to beat expectations. You want to show that the party has a pulse, and you want to show that they can build off of that.
They're
in the future.
relevant.
Yes.
And
Relevant.
it matters in local elections too, because that's it. Government is closest to the people, and the
Yes.
school board races now, which that's another amendment that's on the ballot, making school board races partisan.
Yes.
They are already pretty partisan,
Yes.
but not officially.
And I agree with Forrest. I don't think VP Harris needs to win the White House for Florida Democrats to have a good night.
Yes. Completely agree.
And I think the bottom
What
line,
would a good night for Democrats be?
I would say, and I think this sounds like a low bar, pick up a seat.
Where?
Congress?
I mean, but does it? When
Pick
I'm
up
saying
that
this,
Anna Maria Luna seat.
Yes. District
that would work.
13.
or
Yeah.
hold some of the gains that you've made. If you
Yeah.
can do that, or if you win in these amendments, whether it's 3 or 4, it
Do you
shows
think they're going to win in those amendments?
Get
Oh,
that
boy.
crystal ball out, buddy.
Oh boy.
You're going to be on record, too.
I am not going to go on the record with this. I don't know. I don't know. And there's a million polls that'll tell you a million
Yeah.
different things. What I do know, and I believe this, is that I think we are in a stage of our politics where issues drive people more than leaders. Like you could be totally removed from politics, but you could care about marijuana and you can care about abortion. And I think that segues to my other point. I think voter turnout for Florida Democrats is very big,
Everything.
in the sense that not only on election night, but moving forward, that you can show, hey, we have numbers, we have troops in the trenches, and we just need more resources to
Right
motivate them.
Right now, here's the University of Florida election lab early voting.
Yeah.
It's showing a Republican advantage by 10 points. It has held steady since early voting in person has started.
Yes.
The Democrats were ahead before that.
Yep.
Um,
I can't tell you how many folks I've talked to that say, well, no, I don't like Governor DeSantis, or you name your lawmaker or your elected official, but they care a lot about abortion. They care a lot about
Yeah.
marijuana. I'm sure there are going to be plenty of people who will vote on the amendments and then say, sayonara, I'm going home for the night.
60%, my friend.
It's a tough threshold. It's
Very
the highest
high.
for, I think, any of the ballot initiatives on abortion.
Anywhere. Yeah. So a lot of eyes, it matters for Florida Democrats and Republicans too,
Yeah.
but necessarily. But that abortion initiative matters for Democrats nationally.
Mhm.
Because Republicans need Florida for the Electoral College
Yeah.
to win. If Florida becomes in play, which I'm not saying it is, I don't believe it is now, and I think it'll be a number of years before it ever is. But if they can't win that abortion amendment in Florida, and they've won it in many other very conservative states like Kansas,
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean for their ability to
Right.
does, like you're saying, are
Right.
they relevant?
Right, exactly. And I think that they know that. They know that Amendment 4 is really important. They know that that blame is going to come back on them. I mean, but you also have to recognize, as we just said, 60%. It's a
Very high.
high threshold. It's
Very
hard
high.
to do. I know you didn't ask me directly, but
I
I'll throw you some
I
perspective.
was just going to ask you.
Yeah. So I think that recreational marijuana is probably in a pretty good place. I think they're feeling pretty confident. Having the endorsement, not just of a bipartisan coalition of state lawmakers, but you also have the former president who's saying, yeah,
Yes.
I support this. It's going to be hard for DeSantis and some of his colleagues to defeat it, but, they're trying. I just sat down with the Surgeon General, too, and talked about the health concerns and some of his spiritual arguments that he's making. So, but I think the polling suggests it's in a good place if you like it. And then there's Amendment 4, and Amendment 4 is going to be close. I think it's going to be tight. I think it's going to be tough, and I think that there's a lot of people who are starting to actually, listen to the governor's arguments in these final days and trying to figure out if they believe that it is too broad, that it does lack definitions, and they're really hammering that consent versus
parental consent.
Yes, versus being informed. A parent,
Right.
And so, listen, I don't see it in the language that says anything other than, informing your parents rather than consent of the parents.
Right.
So I think there is an argument to be made there. And that is, I think it's resonating with some people.
The only thing is, I think that the 6-week ban still
that's
really
true too.
bothers people.
It does.
So a month ago, I thought abortion's going to pass. Like 2 months ago, abortion's going to pass, pot not.
Yes.
Now
It's
I
reversed.
feel like pot's going to pass, abortion not, and maybe pot won't either. So I'm kind of like they're both going down today. But my opinion on this changes every day.
Just like the national
and that's
races
just
too.
what I'm thinking right now.
Derek Cam, I know this is your podcast, but can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I have seen it framed in a way to suggest that the outcomes on Amendment 3 and 4 will somehow reflect on Governor DeSantis' administration and the governor's legacy here
Absolutely.
in Florida. And I'm curious if you see it that way.
100%. I'm glad you asked that question, because to me, this helps him as a Republican who has national aspirations. He can be the governor who says, he can be the national candidate who says, I killed that abortion. I stopped the most radical, this is his words, not mine, the most radical abortion amendment ever. All these other states, all these other Republican governors couldn't stop that, but I did.
Yeah. I actually, I'll take that even a step further, and I'll say, I wonder in a universe where Harris wins the presidency, but DeSantis delivers Florida and defeats Amendment 4, does he then become even?
Does it elevate him
Yes.
in Trumplandia?
for 28?
In Trumplandia.
Yeah.
Because he was seen as kind of like he stepped out of line.
Yeah.
He should have stayed in his place.
Yeah, but he did everything he was supposed to do, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
does that make him sort of maybe the next heir apparent for another presidential run? I know he has
It
said that been there,
certainly
done that. But
burnishes his conservative
Yeah.
creds.
yeah.
Certainly burnishes his conservative creds. I think it helps him in many, many ways, not only on the national platform, but also he has had an iron grip on the legislature. And we
Yes.
saw that start to slide a little bit after his withdrawal from the presidential race. This might actually give him another more strength, more power over the legislature.
Well, and then he can also just like step back and say, "See, I told you." Because remember, his big argument was Trump has a ceiling. He has a likability ceiling, and he is not going to be able to get the support that he needs on the national scene to win this election. I can. That was his big argument that he was stressing to
Right.
Iowans and in some of the other primary states. Obviously, it didn't work out for him, but then he can, step back and say, "See, I told you so." And I think it plays into his argument that he made at the beginning of this election cycle.
Yeah, I'm the guy. He can't win.
Yes.
We'll see. I mean, geez, according to the polls, he can't. He
Yeah.
has a damn good chance of winning.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
So you have a prediction to make on
Presidential?
yeah.
I predict that I'm going to be very anxious because I watch all these polls and
I know.
They say one thing and then they say the other thing. And when it comes to reporting it, we actually have a policy right now at our station where we don't report polls unless they meet a certain criterion or threshold.
Good.
Because they're all over the place.
They're crap. You know what happened? People stopped using landlines.
Yeah.
That was the death knoll for tolls.
Yeah.
Do you remember that late race Charlie Crist poll?
Yeah. Yes.
No.
Suggested he was doing a lot better than he ended up
Mhm.
doing. Yeah.
Yeah, that Charlie Crist was going to
Who got clobbered by
pull
what,
over and upset.
20%? Oh,
But-
no. Who did that?
Who was that? Do you remember?
I don't remember who it was, and so I'm not going to
I remember the
drop
Crist
a name.
campaign touting it.
Yes, but again, the problem was turnout.
Yeah.
And I only bring that up just to illustrate the point that I can find you a poll that'll tell you exactly what you want to hear.
Exactly. It's like an economist.
Yes.
Mhm.
You can do that.
And it just makes me so anxious because I don't know what's happening.
But your TV reporters, are you out there? This problem with the Capitol Press Corps, I
Mhm.
think, and for me especially because we had COVID for 2 years.
Yes.
I have this chronic illness. I'm older, so I was really isolated. Then I fractured my tibia. I was home
Yeah,
in the wheelchair
goodness.
for 3 months. And then when I was just getting out of that, I fractured my wrist and had to have surgery. And so I lost that whole year last year, 2023. I lost.
I want
And-
to stand up and give you a hug right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
Poor
Don't
thing.
because I might break. But from 20, I lost the past 3 years, and I really literally haven't even been to even like standing in line at Walgreens. Listening to people's conversations, listening, going. And I used to travel all around the state with the campaigns. That's another thing that's changed in campaigns. We aren't doing buses anymore.
Mm-mm.
We're not in chase cars. We don't like when Alex Sink was running for governor, John Daly, who's been the mayor of Tallahassee for quite some time, was the guy that got assigned to drive me around to follow her
Wow.
from one event to another. Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, nature, the whole reporting landscape has changed
Yes.
in many ways. I used to be able to talk to Joe Lunchbucket and Jane Lunchbucket a lot more than I do now.
Sure.
So what I see on Twitter, like, I don't know, because my neighbors aren't on Twitter. I don't know about your neighbors, but my neighbors aren't on
And
Twitter.
who is on Twitter?
I mean, I
Us?
don't know.
Elected officials?
Right.
I'm not trying
AI.
to- AI,
It's an
bots.
echo chamber. It is. I feel like it is. We're talking to each other or over each other or whatever.
I don't consider Twitter a reflection of our broader society.
Right. So I'm
agree.
saying, like, I
And
don't.
thank goodness.
And I feel like the past 3 years, it was a long way of saying, I don't have a sense now of what regular people
Sure.
think,
Mhm.
other than my neighbors. I have some really conservative neighbors. I have some really liberal
Sure.
neighbors. But I mean, I really, one of the things I miss, and national reporters do still get to do this, they get to go to, the Mike Steiner and
Yeah.
talk to, Jane and Joe and whatever. But do you get to do any of that? Have you been doing any of that this campaign season?
I will say, and again, I'm the state reporter.
Right.
So for the governor's reelection campaign, they put me on the road for about 2 weeks.
Oh, that's good.
And so we went stop to stop, just kind of following around that bus and
Yeah.
hotel room to hotel room. So I was fortunate enough that one that I worked for a company that was willing
To spend the money doing
Yeah,
that.
news gathering ain't cheap.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was blessed that on one hand that they were willing to do it and in a position to do it.
That's great.
So I have had the opportunity to do that in the last cycle. Now that it's kind of a top of the ticket race.
Yeah.
Not so much.
No, we're not doing that for the president.
Mhm.
State reporters don't generally do that. I did that for the Palm Beach Post, though. I was able to travel with one of the presidential candidates fly on their plane. And I was
Yeah.
with Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
His kids were, what do you call it when you like ride a piece of cardboard down the aisle?
Slalom? Sledding?
No.
I'm born and raised in Florida. I could not tell you.
No, you no,
one
on the
does on snow
plane.
or ice.
You
Oh.
ride a piece of
Oh.
cardboard down the center of the plane. It was it was his private
I've
jet.
never seen that.
No, I've
Never experienced it. I spent a lot of time in
Well,
the-
they were very adept at it, let me tell you.
my company was good enough to insist that our reporters get out and travel the state and talk to voters. I spent a whole week on the road
Great.
just a couple of weeks ago,
Good.
doing our Voice of the Voter series.
Oh, I love that. I'm
which-
sorry I missed it.
No, it's okay. Which it frustrated me for one reason in particular. It should have been called Voice of the Electorate or Voice of the Elector because then the acronym would have been VOTE.
Oh,
I know. Missed opportunity.
That's a six-figure idea right there, buddy.
Hey, I'm trying. We'll TM it for next year. But
Do it next year.
We got to get this guy in a boardroom.
I will say it was a great experience. We traveled to different communities and we
I
talked
love
to different
doing that.
collections of voters, right?
Yeah.
So we went to Jacksonville. We talked to the Black community. We went down
Yeah.
to Miami. We talked to the Latino and Hispanic community.
Yeah.
And we went to Gainesville to talk to young voters.
Right.
And really what amazed me, and don't forget the villages. We were in the villages as well to talk to the senior population.
Oh, goody. You got on the golf carts.
Yeah, and I actually put the collection of our stories on my social media page. Not a plug, but I'm just saying.
No, do tell us because I'm going to look.
At FB Saunders, there's a whole list of videos from those different communities and what they told us. And really, what I found was what really impressed me more than anything was the number of independents out there and the number of people that had yet to make up their mind. And this was late September.
How can that be?
I know. These are very clearly
Because
defined
they're
candidates.
not, you know what? Because what my friends who are in the process, lawyers and stuff,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, I'm
Yes.
so anxious. My cortisol levels are all, and he's like, you know what, Derek Cam, I've told you this before, you're online too much.
Yeah. Well,
That's
and
true.
I think with our industry, occupationally, we follow it like a horse race, right?
Yeah.
Every inch matters, every little development. Again, I'll use Tommy Tough Knuckles again. I don't
I
think
love
people,
Tommy Tough Knuckles. I never heard
and
that.
his friend Joe Donut. I think they don't. I don't think they view elections that way. And so I'm not surprised that voters there's still plenty. I think there are a large percentage of people who are still undecided. They're unsure.
Or they're just fatigued.
What was the
fatigued.
biggest surprise from that week-long trip around the state?
I think the thing that surprised me most was, there were a couple things, but I think the thing that surprised me most was the universal issues that kept popping up for everybody. It didn't matter the demographic that I was talking to.
Okay, I'm going to guess kitchen table property insurance,
No, I
gas prices.
broader than that, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Housing.
So economy, just the
Okay, just
state
the
of the
economy
economy,
in general,
number one.
right.
Everybody said
Well,
that.
I said kitchen table.
You did.
That's economy.
So I would
think
qualify
that's
that.
That's a unsophisticated way of saying economy.
The same thing. And then immigration.
Oh, they've done a really good job with
That messaging has gotten out there.
branding
Yes.
that.
So it was a number of people.
That's how
who
Governor
brought that
Scott
up.
won election.
Yeah, and I'm
he
not
campaigned
hearing
on that as an issue.
for young people.
Immigration.
Abortion was a
And
thing.
that was what? How many years ago?
Oh, Scott, before me.
Almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
No, 15 years ago. But that was how he got elected.
Mm.
So immigration and the economy.
They were two of the top issues. Now, this was, a couple months ago. Well, maybe a month ago now. Everything's running together because of the hurricanes. But
Yeah.
It was really interesting. And the abortion issue, I had to prompt when I asked people, what do you think about abortion? I had to ask that. It wasn't something that when I said, what's the top issue for you? It didn't come up.
Well, maybe the Democrats need it. And somebody told me this a year ago. They're putting all their eggs in one basket.
And it's interesting, too, because, they are definitely talking about abortion access. But when you look at the Yes on 4 crew, they are not aligning themselves with any party. They continue to say this is a nonpartisan issue.
I know, because they need Republicans. And
Yes,
when
they
you
do.
have a 60% threshold,
Right.
you need Republicans to support it.
That makes sense.
Do you have any election day traditions? What are you going to be doing on election day?
Well, you know what? This is actually going to be the first time in my little news career that I'm inside of a newsroom on election day. So the whole fabled, everyone ordering pizza and that sort of thing. It'll be the first time I get to participate. I've in the past, and again, I've only been around for like 4 years in news, but
Well, we'll all be in the same building.
well, I'll actually be in Orlando, and I'm sorry.
Oh,
to
you're
break
going
that
to
news.
Orlando.
So they'll
Where
have
are
me in
you
studio.
going to be?
Mar-a-Lago.
You're going to be at Mar-a-Lago.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my gosh.
And in fact, here's an interesting little anecdote about
yeah,
that.
I want to hear.
They're questioning whether or not they need to give us security. And I think they've decided on the side of, yes, we will give you security because we're going to be outside of the building. We'll be.
Wait, you mean your bosses?
Yes. They've decided, I think, that we're going to
You
get
do
some
need security.
Yes. I think
Have you
this is-
covered any Trump events?
Yes.
Have you covered them at Mar-a-Lago?
Yes.
Okay, I have not covered them at Mar-a-Lago.
And listen, that's not, I don't think that's representative of the location that I'm at. It's just the nature of TV news today, right? I think that anytime you're out there being exposed, there are people who want to be on camera.
I was at
Things can get tense.
a Trump rally in the cage where they put you in the center of the arena, sitting next to, just by the luck of the draw, Jim Acosta.
Yeah, Jim.
And people walk, tens of thousands, maybe 15,000 people wearing the little boy pissing t-shirt with CNN on it. Yeah. Coming up to him and posing for selfies, or shaking the what do you call those barricades? Like
Cattlegate.
Shaking the thing. And I was so glad that I was sitting with him, because he had 2 bodyguards. He had 2 bodyguards. So that's just, I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but I'm just saying, like, you do it. This was 8 years ago, or however many years ago.
Even outside the Capitol. I mean, so I typically will go live outside of the Capitol. People hooting and hollering.
Yeah.
And it puts you on edge. Trying to disrupt your live shot.
Yeah.
So even just there.
So they've decided to give, I interrupted you. They've decided to give you security.
Yeah, which I think is smart. I think tensions are going to run high, that night. And I think they will, regardless of the result, win or lose. I think that people are going to be really upset on one side or the other, maybe even both sides. So I don't blame them. And I think that that's another part of journalism today is there's a lot of distrust out there, and it's motivated people to be sometimes aggressive and rarely, but sometimes violent.
And I hope that you're safe. I'll be watching from here, and you'll be in Orlando, covering one of the amendments, or?
So I'll be focusing on Amendment 3 in particular.
Right.
But beyond that, they've also had me, I'll be the numbers guy. So we've.
Oh, you get the big
you'll
board.
Be that guy. Yeah. What's this? What's the
Kornacki?
scene? Yeah. You'll be Steve Kornacki.
Yeah. Telling about poll results in some county, somewhere. But so I'll be in studio. They're going to have me crunching numbers. And we're using AP Votecast. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's new to me, but essentially it's a data platform.
Yeah. Okay.
And it
gets the results, feeds them in.
But it's all the polling leading into the election and on exit. And so throughout the night, and especially the days that follow,
the exit polling,
they keep feeding in more and more data. So your margin of error starts to slim down. And it's interesting, you can break it down into various demographics, by gender, by affiliation, age demographics, by your religion. And so
that is interesting.
Yeah. And you can follow that path anywhere. But so I have the luxury. It's going to be fun.
Doing training? Are you getting training?
So I'm going to be going down there about a week early. And they'll have me sit up on the board. And
that's cool.
I did a training class the last couple of days on kind of how to navigate that data.
That'll be really interesting.
I'm excited about it because I've never done anything like that.
Yeah.
And it'll be a good experience.
It'll be a great experience. And you might be at Mar-a-Lago for God knows how long.
Well, right now through Wednesday. I know that much at least. But yeah, I mean, that's also the reality of this election cycle. Is that,
we might not know.
Well, it's probably likely we won't. I
Right.
mean, given how close it is, unless the polling is way off one way or
Right.
the other, we probably won't know for a few days. I mean, what did they say? Maricopa County was going to take, 10 or so days?
It's going to take a while. Hey, listen, guys. I thank you so much for coming. I hope you come visit again.
Sure.
This has been fantastic. And my guest who was supposed to be here, I was going to ask him what his favorite sneakers are. What are your favorite sneakers?
Forrest, you want to kick off?
I don't really wear a whole lot of sneakers.
You don't wear sneakers?
Not often.
What's your favorite casual shoe?
Well, maybe Hoka's or
Hoka's.
Olukai, the boat shoes, because I'm that guy.
Do you have a boat?
No, I have a kayak.
Oh, kayak.
Does that
Okay.
count?
All right, that counts. Yeah.
I'm a boots guy through and through. I'll wear boots out in the wild.
Boots guy.
But at home, and I'll be honest here, I love Crocs.
Okay,
And I'm a Crocs man.
My man.
Jason.
My man.
There they are. Look at them.
Dara, I have to go. I have to get out of here. I can't with the Crocs. I will never own Crocs.
I know what I'm
Look
getting you
at
for Christmas.
when I broke my leg, I couldn't get my feet into shoes.
I recognize that.
And so I started with the COVID changed me in a lot of ways. Like I now leave the house without makeup on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
and I wear Crocs outside of the house. But
Well,
these
and-
are, look, come on, these are glam. They're leopard
love 'em.
print and zebra print.
And
so-
I was like you, Forrest. I
we go.
swore off Crocs. I swore them off. And then when I enlisted, so I was in the Army, then
You were in
everyone-
the Army. You should
I
have put
was.
that in your intro.
oh, well, yeah, I was in the Army. I did a little
A
time of
tall,
service.
long drink of water who was also in the
In
Army.
the Army. In the
Wow,
Army. I
TV
was
star.
a
Okay.
military police officer.
My dad was in the Army.
What did he do?
My dad invented the food that astronauts used in their first space mission.
That's crazy.
That's nuts.
So we're talking about like the freeze-dried stuff, or is that just a
It
bunch
was
of marketing
food
crap?
in tubes.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
wow.
It was that old.
Yum.
Yeah.
Gerber. Space Gerber.
Space Gerber. Yep. That was what my dad did. We were stationed in Italy, and
That is
sadly
so
he
cool.
died in a car accident when I
Oh,
was 2.
goodness.
and-
So
yeah.
sorry.
But anyway, that was my dad's legacy. But anyway, so you were military police.
I was, yeah, and I did. I did 1 year in Afghanistan, and
Well, thank you for your service.
oh no, thank you. Yeah,
My parents are both buried in Arlington National
Oh, are they?
Cemetery, so I
Wow.
had
Hmm.
quite a visceral response to the Arlington
Sure.
debacle.
Yeah, I joined right after high school. Just kind of something I always wanted to do.
Wow.
And it's kind of, and I look back at it now, and I'm grateful it happened the way it did. Where I graduated high school, I enlisted, I went to basic training. I think it was August to December, and by January they're like, "We're shipping you to Afghanistan. You got to
Oh
catch
my
up to your unit."
God.
And I looked that's years ago, and I look at it now. I was like, I'm glad I did it when I did. I was young,
Didn't know better.
didn't know, but you're bulletproof at 19 years
You're right.
old. You know,
Absolutely.
I was going to
Nothing
save
bad's
the
ever
world.
going to happen. Yeah.
You know, and now I look back on it, and I'm like, oh boy, I did that.
Yeah. What the? You think you're badass.
And I did it with a smile.
You are badass. Yeah. What a charming smile. Well, what a great story.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
Somewhere along the way, I picked up a love for Crocs, and Forrest, I'm going to
You
get you
can't
on
hold
board.
it against him. He's a vet.
No, I can hold his feet against him. Yes,
Okay.
I can.
Well, how about mine?
Well, listen, you
I'm an
were in
old
a
lady
state
and I
of
haven't-
recovery. I think it's very important to take your time, but when you're ready to come back to fashion, we'll be ready here for you.
All right. Well, there you have it. Forrest Saunders, Capitol Reporter EW Scripps, and Jason Delgado, Capitol Reporter Spectrum News. It has been such a treat having you guys here in the Speakeasy with me today.
It was a lot of fun.
Love to do it again.
Thanks for listening to Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida, hosted by News Service senior writer Dara Cam and produced by me, Mike Exline. Music for the podcast was recorded by Periodic Labs, LLC. To tell us what you like to hear, what you've thought about the podcast so far, or even just to mention how awesome we are, we have a new email address and we'd love to hear from you.
And gang, do submit your suggestions for the name of the studio. We have relocated to that email address is podcasts, that's podcasts with an S, at e.newsserviceflorida.com. Yes, send us your suggestions. We will come up with a prize. I'll announce it in the next week or so. Podcasts at e.newsserviceflorida.com.